I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Morristown Township Board of Education. In accordance with the state's sunshine law, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending a notice of the time, date, location, instructions for remote access, and making public comment, and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting on May 20th, 2021 to the Courier Post and Burlington County Times. Can I please have a moment of silence? Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
James, roll call, please.
Dr. Alberti?
Here.
Mr. Fairchild?
Here.
Mrs. Wall?
Here.
Dr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Villanueva? Mr. Weeks? Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Ms. Romano?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. So great to see our board members in person. And Jesse Adams and Jeff Arry too, and James Heiser. So thank you for being here. Tonight is a special meeting primarily to listen to the presentations for superintendent search firms for a permanent superintendent. Just want to remind everyone, we are live streaming. The presentations portion of this will be public, so we will be live streaming this. Afterwards, we will go into executive session for discussion, just to give everyone the layout for tonight. Thank you so much. Jesse Adams is here from New Jersey School Board Association for putting in a proposal to be part of our superintendent search process. And thank you for taking the time and for coming in person. So whenever you're ready with your presentation, you could go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thank you, board, for allowing me the opportunity to come in and speak with you. I know we've got a half hour, not a lot of time, so I've got a couple things I'm gonna try and highlight from the services perspective, and then hopefully be able to answer any questions that you may have. So getting started, let's talk about some key elements of the search process that you should be aware of that we facilitate. Before I actually go to the slide, a couple of the handouts that I've given you. One is the cost matrix. It's the one that's got the dollar figures. It identifies kind of the elements of the search and then the different levels of service and what's included based on the list. So that's an important document for you all, because we do, the New Jersey School Board has a process that is tailored depending on the level of board participation. Basically, what it boils down to is how much do you want the consultant to do versus how much you want to do yourselves. And we have a varying range of costs associated with it. Based on the RFP, we focused on the $12,500, which I think covers a lot of those elements, but that doesn't mean you can't choose any other level of service if that's something you desire. But the other handout I passed out was a draft calendar. I'll touch on that. And then an advertisement, I'll also touch on that when I refer to that section. So first, let's talk about the calendar. Our initial, in the process with New Jersey School Boards, that initial, once we're under contract, that initial meeting will be a pretty hefty meeting. We're going to talk about calendar, timelines, when are you looking to have superintendent physically starting his or her first day. Your RFP is looking at January 1, 2022. I will tell you that's not an unreasonable date. Got plenty of runway. And it's all going to be a function of the caliber of your pool and what you find as you work through the process. If you've got a strong pool, you'll get to the end with someone that you believe is the right fit. NJSBA is going to tell you, and if I'm your consultant, you're going to hear me till the cows come home. Don't settle. It's too important. It's the most important thing you do as a Board of Education. I think you've heard me say that in trainings and everything else. This is the most important thing a Board of Education will do for student achievement in your district. So you set the tone by the superintendent that you bring in. So I will preach till the high heavens, don't settle. And if I think you're steering on potentially, I will tell you that as your ultimately it's your call, but I'm going to provide you all the advice I can give you from what I'm seeing in the process and the applicants you're talking to. So we would do that. We would also talk about the advertisement because you got to get things rolling with the ad. That first meeting, we will have a pretty detailed conversation talking about what your requirements are, your mandatory, your required requirements, what are your preferred criteria, any other elements that you believe you want captured in the ad. And I know sometimes boards say, well, we haven't done anything with our public yet. How do we? The ad is just a starting point. You determine based on your knowledge, your desires, what you want that ad to say to attract candidates. Once we do that, my responsibility is to take that results of that session with you and turn that into an ad. And we'll go from there. Also during that session, we'll talk about a lot of other things like internal candidates. What's the board's desire on how they handle internal? I'll ask you a question of, all right, some folks, everybody travels to get here, whether they're out of state or in state. What's the policy? What do you want me to tell candidates as it relates to travel reimbursement? Is there or isn't? So we'll have all of those conversations in that first session. So it's not going to be a quick meeting. It's really setting the foundation to kick us off. So that's the initial. As I said, we'll get the foundation. I will then develop an ad. And I gave you a sample of a very recent ad. I just completed the Riverside search. They've approved their superintendent. That is out of our first session discussions. That's the ad and the information that they wanted captured in their ad. The reason I provide that to you, that's pretty much NJSBA's standard format of the kind of things we put into an ad. We take that and turn that into our online version, as well as sending it out digitally to other areas. But so that gives you a sense of what an ad would look like for Morristown. The initial paragraph that talks about your district, you gave a lot of that in your RFP. So typically, I'm saying, have the BA and pull that together. I probably can pull all of that right out of your RFP, but ultimately, you will see the final product and approve it. Once you give me the thumbs up, then we take charge of that to get that advertised. Stakeholder input sessions. They are available, part of the process at the board's option. We have multiple ways of doing them. I think traditionally prior to COVID, we tried to do them all they were always done in person. During COVID, we've had a lot of searches going on because COVID has opened up a lot of vacancies. And so boards, the ones, especially the ones I've just recently done, the input sessions, we relied on surveys. And then look for those typical characteristics, qualities, educational features, built a survey, got the survey out to the community, all of the stakeholders, captured those results, and then had a virtual forum where we went through the survey results so that the public could hear and then provide any inputs or comments on. And that's been very successful in this day and age. Something that we've talked about, even if we eventually get back, we got a lot more feedback because I can tell you in person, we may do a community in-person night and 20 people show up. And that's the data that I put together, say, okay, here's part of your profile. Does it really represent? We found that the survey method is really, during this pandemic, has really provided us good data for the board. So we have multiple ways. We would discuss what you want to do for input, stakeholder inputs, and we decide the methods that you believe would be best for your community and your stakeholders. Interview questions. Part of my responsibility would be to take, once we've developed criteria and all that info, and I'll talk about the criteria in one of the next slides. I would develop, based on what I've gotten from the survey, the criteria, everything else, and you propose questions for the first round of interviews. You would get those plus additional samples of other questions, and it would be ultimately you're going to decide on the questions. You may even decide you want to add your own questions. That's perfectly fine. But I would at least give you the starting point to say, okay, here's what I'm recommending as potentially your first round interview questions. Then we would work through them. Ultimately, we'd get to the final. I provide your evaluation sheets, everything you need for the interview with the questions, and help you orchestrate the process. In our searches in the 12, 5, and 15, I attend every interview. I'm part of the process from the standpoint of observing. I don't ask questions, but I also try to make sure I'm hearing what the candidates are saying, provide you any feedback that I may have if you've got questions, but also I'm there to make sure you don't say something you shouldn't say. The idea is to keep it a legally defensible search. So I can tell you that for the $7,000 search, it doesn't include me sitting in, but one of my searches, the board said, we want a 7, but we want you for that. Is that possible? And yes, for an additional fee, I go back to headquarters, we come up with a number, and they added that to the 7,000 to include me in there. So, but the other 2, it's part of the service. Administrative tasks. Basically, regardless of the level of search, we have an administrative search administrative assistant who supports all of us field reps when we're doing searches. All of the administrative stuff is taken care of. We handled getting the applications, all that whole process. We do all of the interview scheduling for every round of interviews. We also, when you're ready to release people that you have said, okay, here's our first round candidates, the rest of the pool, we don't need them anymore. We do all of those release letters. We send them the thanks but no thanks letters. So we take care of all that. So all of the administrative stuff, in all of the searches we handle. Advertising, real quick. Obviously we get the ad once it's ready to go. I just want to give you some information on our reach from an advertising standpoint. Our superintendent vacancy website averages 8,000 hits per month. We get a lot of traffic to that site. Additionally, we have an ongoing, anybody who's interested in being notified when an opportunity presents itself, they can send us and be added to our mailing list. We have over 850 individuals. Some are assistant superintendents, principals, but folks who want to know when opportunities. So when a new opportunity is posted, our admin shoots a blast email out to those 850 plus to let them know Morristown has an opportunity. You might be interested. Here's the link. Go look at the ad on our website. Vacancies, all of the ones we do, we send to every one of our sister associations, NJSA, ASBO, PSA. They post them on their sites as well. And all of the executive county superintendent's office, we digitally send your ad to them, asking them to get the word out to the supervisors, administrators, superintendents in their counties. So that is all included in the advertising. In addition to our website, our social media site, all of our NJSBA digital sites is included. That's as part of the fees that you pay. There is additional opportunity for advertising, but that is at an additional cost to the board. The board would, if you wanted to do print media or other non-NJSBA or the ones I've already states that I've already, like top school jobs or some of those, we have an advertising firm that we are under contract with, that if you have that interest, I can get you tell me what newspapers, Star, Ledger, or whatever. I provide that information to them. She goes and provides the quote of estimates for all of the print media, as well as any additional online sites that you might be interested in. I provide that to the board. The board decides they want to partake on some of those. I would connect the agency with the BA, and the BA would do the purchase order to make that happen. And they would take your ad and open it up on those venues as well. And national. just an FYI, we transitioned last year to a new online application system. It's called Revelus, but it was developed by the Ohio School Boards Association, and it is part of the National Association of Superintendent Searches, which is part of NSBA national. And so because of that, all of the states that are paying a fee to use that search application tool, anybody in the United States who has gone into the system and created their profile is notified of they have access to every opening that's put into the system. So every time we post ours into and open the application, basically set it all up and open it and turn it on current live in the system, you are being advertised nationally through NSBA, through this system. So that's an added feature that we are getting out of this new system that we use. As I said, the development of the ultimate criteria, what I mean by that is the profile of what you as a board will be thinking about as you're interviewing and talking to candidates, as we talk about interview questions. That criteria is going to be developed based on your inputs, the input sessions that we have with stakeholders, and all of that information will be assimilated, and I will provide you with a candidate profile report. And that report will tell you, based on all the data we've collected, here's the kind of things you need to be thinking about as you're on this journey of looking for a superintendent. So that we provide that and it's one of the deliverables in the contract, that when we deliver that's your cheat sheet, so to speak, to hopefully keep you focused on what type of individuals you should be thinking about, considering, and listening for those characteristics. So you'll have that profile. I'll help facilitate that. As I said, stakeholder session survey, we're going to use the data that we collect. You'll have that data as well, but you'll also have a summary report that I will prepare for you that says, here's your cheat sheet for as we move down this process. And the stakeholders, you can see the laundry list. It's basically everybody. Most districts don't exclude anyone. Sometimes they want to make sure the booster clubs get an invite to the survey or whatever. So you tell me who you want to make sure gets the opportunity to provide input, and we make sure that they have that opportunity. Online application. I talked about our new system. It's an online application process for the applicants. When they go to the ad, there's going to be a link where they can apply. When they go on, they have to basically, if it's the first time, they'll establish their profile, and then they'll go to the specific application for Morristown and complete. It's a very comprehensive application. A lot of legal stuff we ask them on, has your cert ever been revoked? Those kind of things they have to answer. But there's all the work history, all that stuff is provided. They in turn will do all of that online. They submit, and I will see them as they pop into the queue for your site. Our admin secretary double checks them to see, make sure that they've got something in every section, even though there are some sections that are mandatory. You got to put something in there before you can leave it. But like reference documents, you don't have to put anything in there. But if you want, you can upload documents and things. So, but she'll check to make sure those things that they had to do, they got something in there that makes sense. But then ultimately, that will be the pool. It's an online system. Ton of information on each applicant. The way you get the pool will be when it's ready for your delivery. I will give each of you an account. You'll set up your password, and then you'll be able, and we'll walk through the training on that, how to pull each applicant up, and you'll have access to everything the applicant gave you. In the old days, we used to bring a box of paper in, right? And then you have to make arrangements to meet at a certain time because you need to make sure you didn't have a quorum coming into the board office to review the folders. Well, now it's online at your leisure. You can look at every applicant if you want. You got 40 applicants, you want to look at 40, go right ahead. But as part of the process, the second report that you'll get from me is what we call the pool report. And it's a combination of things. One, you'll get a pool report that will give you, I call it the demographics of the pool. So you'll know how many, how many superintendents applied, how many principals applied, how many, et cetera, where they live, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So it's a demographic kind of report. That report's good for the board president because it's a document that it's pretty benign information that you can, at a public meeting, say, just want to let you know, update, on the superintendent search. We've, the applications have closed. The board is in the process of reviewing the applicants. And here's some demographic information on what we've seen so far. That report has been helpful to board presidents, kind of letting the public know a little bit. But once you get in, like I said, you've got access. You can take notes in the system. They're your notes. No one, not even me, can see the notes you put in the system, so that when you come back, the notes are there. When we meet, we would meet after a certain amount of time. The board would determine how many days or weeks do we allow the board to do their homework, review the applicants. We would meet in our process. We meet to discuss. And basically, if I'm your consultant, I'm going to tell you, we're going to decide on a number, but let's say we decide everybody bring your top 10 applicants that you want to be considered to bring in for an interview. We'll go through, review everybody's. There are going to be some that are going to be on everybody's list. Those are no-brainers. Those are coming. Now, what's the magic number? We'll debate that, discuss that, and eventually arrive at your first round list. And then also during this process, we'll have been talking about questions and all that good stuff, but ultimately you'll have your first round identified, your candidates identified, your questions identified, and then we'll schedule the interviews, and then we'll execute at the end of the last night on the first round. We'll talk about who do you want to bring for the second round, and that process will continue until we get to that single finalist. So, but the beauty is it's online. You have access to it. We can be sitting in a meeting, in the interview, and you can open your laptop, dial into your thing, and pull up your apps and talk about people if you want to. So that's been, we found this past year, that boards love that feature instead of having to arrange to come look at paper. Bottom line, it's our process. We have a pretty robust, well thought out, well-respected process. And the big thing on our process, we've done over 400 searches since 2000 to now. Just in the last 5 years or so, I'm trying to think it's right. We've gotten, I want to say, since 2015 to 2021, New Jersey School Board has done 103 superintendent searches. Since 2000, that total is 493. I believe we always say this, and we feel pretty confident to saying that we do the most superintendent searches in the state of New Jersey. We have a process that definitely, and it's another thing that you're going to hear me if I'm your search consultant, confidentiality. We maintained the applicant's confidentiality all the way up until you've decided who your finalist is, and now we need to open the kimono because you're going to start doing reference checks. So we get their permission so that you can go call their district and all that stuff. So we do our best, and we're pretty successful at maintaining confidentiality. When confidentiality does get breached in a search, we've seen sitting superintendents who have applied pull out of the search because they don't want their name getting out there. So we're pretty confident about our process, but ultimately it's your search. We don't tell you should hire this one or you shouldn't hire this one. We're going to give you what we observe, what our thoughts are, but ultimately you make that decision on who the right person is that's going to fit your district and do the best for you and your children. So I think the other added bonus, I'm going to be here. When the search is done, I don't go away. I have a vested interest in helping you and that superintendent have a great relationship. So that's to me an added bonus that, you know, if it doesn't work out, it's all of us in this together, because I'm going to be here till the cows come home. So with that, I'm done. Let me open it up for any questions you may have. Please feel free.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. We appreciate that. I have one question for now, and then I'll let the board members have a couple, but I'll start with, do you have any limitations? I know our community wants to be very involved in the process. Do you have any limitations on the amount of community forums we have? Or like if we wanted to have a virtual one plus an in-person one, are you restricted in that?
No, I mean,
Okay.
you know, in some districts, when we were doing it in person, some districts wanted one at every school.
Okay.
And so we will discuss what
All of
types of
that.
input sessions, how many, where, you know, I had one district who wanted to do it in a community center in town to make it easier for the senior citizens to come out. So we, you know, we're flexible. We will provide the stakeholder inputs. We'll discuss how you want to and where you want to do them. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Jesse, I have 3 questions. for
Sure.
you. They're all related though. So what's your current thoughts on the caliber of the pool that you're seeing?
Fairly strong. I can tell you there's a board that's in the process of hopefully finishing their search, but in their pool, they lost 3 applicants who withdrew because they are now going to be sitting superintendents in 3 districts. So just they had it, you know, they were in other pools as well, and they pulled out of those pools because so the talent, I can tell you this past year and a half, we've seen major uptick in searches because of people leaving. And this is a golden opportunity in time for anybody who wants to be a superintendent, looking for that first shot, or they are a sitting superintendent and think it's time to move maybe to a bigger district. These opportunities are there and people are jumping at them, and the talent is pretty strong right now.
So the next 2 questions, and I'm asking both of you at the same time.
Sure.
How successful are you on placements first round through? So just overall over the years. And then second, how many searches are you currently conducting personally?
Personally, I'm finishing my 4th one. When they pick somebody, as soon as they get through the contract process, I am going to be done with the 4 searches that I've been running with the last 8 months. So if I got this one, this would be my first search going forward. So, and what was the other part of your
Just
question?
how successful?
First time through?
First time through, yeah.
Yeah, I have personally, all the searches that I've done, we've gotten to a candidate every time. But I will tell you that if we get to the end and you feel like, well, we just don't have someone, we got to start and advertise and get a new pool, I'm with you. There's no extra cost to start over again. For NJSBA, once we sign up with you, we're with you until we get your candidate and you're happy, you've made that selection and hired that person. So it's one fee. We're going to the end. But personally, I have not gotten to the point where I had to start over again.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question about the advertisement. I think most of us, we're all very interested in getting a very obviously qualified, but also very diverse pool.
Yep.
You talked about in the advertising part, you have your mailing lists, you have obviously people coming to you. Have you found that that's been able to get a diverse pool, or what else do you think would be necessary? Would it be the outside advertising?
I would say that you're a great straight man for me because I actually forgot to mention that.
Okay.
One of the things that we've been doing this past year is a lot of boards are asking for how do we reach out to a more diverse, to ensure a diverse pool. We've gone to our advertising folks and said, when you give us information on other online sites, we want also online sites that specialize in diverse candidates. So in one of my searches, there were three or four different websites that were Hispanic, African American, Native Indian. There were sites, organizations that will advertise with that population to make your opportunity known. So there is that opportunity to do that. And we provide that opportunity through the advertising agency, and for you to make that choice. And they're not super expensive.
Okay, so it would be that add-on part. It's not part of the standard advertising.
I mean, obviously, where we send to, hopefully, we send to all the universities as well in New Jersey and colleges. So hopefully those where they advertise opportunities in those different colleges, universities, et cetera, we're hoping that that will draw a more diverse group. But there are online sites, organizations that we can reach out to, and will, for a small fee, put your advertisement in front of those demographic groups.
Okay, great, thanks.
If you have any other questions, I'm going to leave everybody my business card. Oh, go ahead.
Do you exclude other search firms from posting on School Board
Yes.
Association?
Yes, we post two conditions. We're doing the search. They will go on all of our media. If a board, a lot of smaller boards can't even afford a $4,000 fee, they'll do their own search. They'll build an ad and they'll contact the field rep and say, we're doing our own search, no third party, and we'll post theirs. And we've done a couple of those this year. I mean, a good example, Southampton. They're small. We posted theirs, and they're about to hire, a new superintendent. They did their own search, but that's the conditions.
Great. I have
Sorry.
one question.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, back to Mr. Weinstein's question about how many searches concurrently. You said you were working on about 4.
I'm finishing up number 4 right now.
Right. And so potentially, is there a limit to how many you individually would be assigned at one point?
Oh, well, let me tell you, 4 at one time has been the most I've ever had to do. Usually it's 1 or 2 a year and they're spread out. But during COVID, we being all of us field reps who also are consultants for searches, we've all had multiple 3 to 4 at a time going on. That was an interesting, let me put it this way. I learned that I'm pretty good at balancing everything and managing my time, because you're forced to making sure you keep all of the timelines, going in the manner they go. Because no one board can afford to slow down because my schedule gets booked. So right now, 4. I was concerned when all those boards contacted me, but knock on wood, I was successful in doing 4. If you tell me I'm going to get 5 now going forward, I don't know about that, but I feel comfortable doing 4 and balancing it. So that for me, that load works for me. But also I will point out, regardless of the number of searches, I'm the primary, but I've also in the past supported my peers and they would support me as needed. I have to reach back to my entire organization for support, as well as all of the other entities, legal, labor relations, et cetera. So I have to reach back for everybody. And I've assisted some of my other peers in past years where they were swamped. So we made sure that the board didn't lose out in the process.
Thanks.
Yes.
And just piggybacking on David's original question about the pool, it was good to hear you say there's such a qualified pool right now. I think some of us were thinking potentially we would delay even the search process, assuming the pool wasn't so strong. What are your thoughts? But you feel a delay, versus a delay? Versus
I
now?
think right now, the situation is driving the applicants. We're, like I said, this past year, we've seen a stronger set of pools than we had prior to COVID. And then, like I said, the opportunities are there and they're going to continue to be there. Because I think, I don't think the retirements have stopped. I think folks are dropping retirement notices like that.
No, that's good to know, because we were swayed.
The
we were
other
thinking
thing
the
too,
other way.
it's the applications, you have a records retention requirement. Your BA does it.
Right.
And in the past, we would give you a box of all the applicants and their materials. you go store that and keep it for, the required period. Under this new system, we would download a zip file of all the applications, provide it to the BA for the record custodian, and you'd have it digitally. So, but these are your applicants, your materials. We don't keep it once we turn it over to you.
Perfect. Any other questions? No, I think we're good.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you so
opportunity
much.
and good luck on your search,
Thank
whether
you.
you pick us or not.
Thank you. We
Find the right
appreciate that.
person for Morristown. I'm a Burlington County guy, grew up in Mount
We
Holly.
know that.
So I played against you many times. I have a lot of respect for your district. So I'm sure you guys will bring in the right superintendent for the kids.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Will I be able to get, once you're through the process, at least some information on who applied, who submitted to, who proposals to me? Thank you. You're welcome. Have a great night. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.
Just make sure to stay somewhere near the microphone and, yep, forward and backwards buttons on there.
Hi. It's all set. Judy, Brian, yeah, come on up. Well, sure. No, come on up. Come on up. We're all. What do you think? You want to stay that way? Go, look, that's great. Tell me when you're all ready. We're good?
Hello. I think we're ready.
Terrific.
Go right ahead.
Hi, my name's Michael Kushar. I'm one of the partners with Strategic Educational Advantage. With me is Dr. Brian Zakowski, Ms. Judy Ratner. My partner who will be working with us is Dr. Frank Oriema. We'll go into some introductions in a few minutes. But we've been doing searches for over 8 years. We started with a large national search firm, and then quickly we thought we could do it better on our own because we customize our searches. We are very much into making a fit. All of us are either active superintendents or retired superintendents. So we understand that the most important job the Board of Education can do is to hire the chief school administrator. And so we all take pride in working with boards of ed and a perfect fit. And we have a really thorough process to do that because you as a Board of Ed, you've been elected to accomplish the duties of hiring the superintendent, evaluating the superintendent. But we also need to have stakeholder input into it. The superintendent represents the entire community, not just school age parents of children in schools, but the entire community. So our search will focus on input from every member of the community. Now, not every member will take advantage of participating, but when we do a search at the end of the process, everyone can say they had an opportunity to participate. And we'll talk about how exactly we do that in a moment. So here are some searches that we recently completed. And we don't do a lot at once. Again, we customize it. And we purposely chose Morristown to apply for doing the search because we see such value in Morristown, and we know that we can attract a really strong group of candidates for the district. So we were very particular about it. Superintendent candidates like stability, and they like boards that are functional, working together. You have a very impressive strategic plan that you've put together. And looking through it, you have a good blueprint of not just maintaining education, but excelling it. Brian, Judy, anything you want to add to that? Well,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Sikowski. It's a pleasure being here. Yes, I just want to add that fit is such an important part. As superintendent for 23 years. Yes, I started with 7, so I not just 23 years. Fit is the most important thing because it's really working with and for the Board of Education. Nothing gets done if there's not that synergy that's created. So that's why that fit is so important. And we like to say, as for a search firm, it's important for us because we don't want to make promises of attracting candidates because we don't attract the candidates. Your reputation, the district reputation, the district's achievement, profile really helps us attract quality candidates. And we're going to go into, a little bit later, not just candidates from your county, but state and even national. And we have a lot of experience talking about that national prestige of a community like Morristown. So I just want to add that.
Sure.
And we'll jump into that a little bit later.
And so we're very particular about, again, fits of where we work and communities we work with. So on the board is just recent searches that we're doing, and we work in the tri-state area. So currently we're finishing up Pleasantville, New York, which is in Westchester County, right next to Chappaqua. And we're at the final stage where the board is ready to appoint. We're also working in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and we're in the development phase of the profile. But in New Jersey, we've recently completed Wall Township and Little Silver in Monmouth County. Judy was a consultant on the Little Silver search with us. Secaucus Public Schools, Rhinebeck Central, New York, Goshen Central, Yorktown Heights, Boonton Township, Clinton Township, North Shore, Long Island, and Mayapack Public Schools in Westchester, and the Belleville Public Schools. Those are our most recent searches. So what I'd like to do now is tell you about how we come up with the profile, how we put it all together and how we get the input. So we will work with you as a board and we will come up with a survey. And that survey will be put out to everybody in the community. We have hard copies for people that do not have access to the internet. If we need to translate it into other languages, we'll have that done. Again, we want access for the entire community. And again, we want them to have input, not choice. The choice is the Board of Ed to choose, but we're going to have full input by the entire community. Besides the survey that goes out there, we will be working with focus groups that you as a board identify. That's important. And the types of groups that we'll work with, of course, the PTA, many times municipal, mayor, borough administrator, police chief, members of the union, the association, administrative groups, special ed parents, if you have a foundation, the groups that you identify that are key, we will meet with them. And going back to making sure nobody is left out, we either have one or two community forums. If we do two, one would be in the morning and of course one in the evening. The benefit of COVID during the searches, the Zoom and virtual have increased participation tremendously. We finished the Goshen, New York search, which was Orange County in the fall. And on our open community forum, we had over 500 people, which is quite a lot for a small community. But having the virtual may be an option in hybrid. Certainly, there's a lot of benefit. We will interview each of you as board members, not as a group, but individually, so that you have your own voice. And we focus the questions around three simple questions. What's the strength of the Morristown School? Meaning, why'd you choose to live here? Why'd you choose to raise your family? Why are you living? What's so good about Morristown? Then the second question is, what are the challenges Morristown has? Not just as a school, but as a community. What are the challenges? And the third question, what are the characteristics that you like to see in the next superintendent? And again, we will get input on the survey, we'll get it by focus groups, and we'll also interview individuals, whether it be assistant superintendents, business administrators, key people that the board works with us to identify during the process. The other thing that I believe strongly in, Judy, Brian, I know you feel the same. We like to involve students in the process and have them and talk to groups of students and get their input and perspective. And there are two groups, having done this for a long time, there are two groups I love to meet with. And that's the group of the kids, and I love meeting with the support staff. I have had the best input meeting with custodians, secretaries, cafeteria workers. The insight that they bring, you just can't minimize it. So we have a really broad input into that. The last line is key as well, and I'm proud of this. We put a 2-year guarantee behind our search. If the superintendent, she or he doesn't work out for 2 years, we come back and do the search for free. Done a lot of searches, and we never had to make good on our warranty because we really work hard with the board to make the right fit. We don't bring pools of candidate from one search to the other, because what's a good fit for one district doesn't mean it's a good fit for all districts. And Dr. Zakowski, Brian was talking about how we go international. We're not going international or national for prestige, but it's because of fits. And what we found in the past number of years, the number of people applying from out of state for positions has increased dramatically. And why is it increased? Because there's a lot of people coming back to where they grew up and maybe lived in other states. Maybe they're coming back to take care of elderly parents. Whatever reason, these are really good candidates that have interest, not in just getting any job, but in getting the job they're applying for. And when we do this process, we make sure the applications are structured that way, that we don't just recruit and get blanket generic applications. We make sure that in the advertisements, that one of the things we request as a board, and already we, as a superintendent, we're ex officio, but as consultants, we feel we're a team with the Board of Ed. And so we ask that they write a cover letter that speaks to their experience and how they will be a good fit. So right from the beginning, we have all the candidates focused on the district. And again, Morristown has a lot of things going for it, things that are obvious, just being in close proximity to Philadelphia and just the reputation of the school as a community. It's a very desirable place. Brian and Judy?
We recently did, as a chair of the Middle States Committee located in Philadelphia, we recently did a search to replace our president. And people love Philadelphia, but they didn't come to Philadelphia because the job was in Philadelphia. They applied for the job or a national search because of the organization. And I know a community and a district like Morristown, people will come back from New Jersey, as Dr. Kushar said, for other reasons than, maybe personal reasons, but professional reasons. We're finding that people don't say, I want to go to New Jersey. They look for profiles of district that bring them and attract them into that particular state. So that's what we're finding. And so we're very confident that with Morristown's reputation, the accomplishment, the community, it really will enable us to find that fit, whether it's from someone from another state, another county, but it's exciting because you as a leader of the governance structure will make this a worthwhile and valuable search for us if we're selected.
Brian, I'm going to ask Judy. Judy, we're going to delve into the strategic partnerships because that's what makes us really good and helps us recruit. So why don't you talk about some of the strategic partnerships and lead into your own introduction of
Sure.
yourself.
I'm pleased to be here this evening and to get to meet all of you. When we talk about our strategic partnerships, we have them in a variety of ways. One of the associations is the NJASA. I am a retired superintendent from Berkeley Heights in Union County, and I am currently the Director of Special Projects for NJASA. So I have oversight for women's leadership, for leadership diversity. We mentor all of the directors, assistant superintendents in the state of New Jersey. And I've been tied with that for the last at least 15 years. So that is one of the connections. Brian spoke with you about the Middle States Commission. We also are affiliated with a number of universities. Me in particular with Monmouth University, with University of Pennsylvania, because we have connections with many programs that we do in terms of equity, and they're affiliated with those universities. And then I had the good fortune in 2016 to be selected as the Superintendent of the Year for New Jersey. And I also served on the National Governing Board for AASA. And as a result of that, I also had an opportunity to work with the Gates Foundation for a power lunch, which was for women's leadership nationally and internationally. So I have a number of connections in those areas. And I've had the good fortune throughout my educational career. I started my teaching career in Chatham and then became an administrator in Montville and then went to Berkeley Heights. And when I look at Morristown, it's a very similar structure, high performing districts. They're districts where the communities have high standards and the students usually are very successful because of the support, not just of the board and the administrators and the teaching staff, but because the whole community comes together in support for them. So I have a very good handle on what your district's about and what you need in order to continue to move your district forward.
Thank you. Brian, why don't you introduce yourself, your background, talk about your strategic partnering network.
Yes, again, good evening. Currently, I'm the superintendent of North Brunswick Township. I've been a superintendent there for 15 years and a superintendent for 23 years. June 30th will be my last day as I retire. We'll spend more time consulting. As you know, it's very difficult to run districts and spend full-time consulting. So do some full-time consulting as I move on to another career. So I really I benefited from the synergies created from a good working relationship between a board and a superintendent. 15 years in one district. The board showed me the honor of allowing me to pick my successor as I leave June 30th. So for momentum and continuity. So I feel the experience that I was able to gain and the insight has really led me into other parts of my career, such as I have a partnership. I work with Seton Hall University, where I received my doctorate, and it's an honor to come back. And I've been running their Aspiring Superintendent Academy for more than a dozen years now, and it's really rewarding it also gives me insight and helps me allows me to work with other districts for aspiring top-notch educators and what it takes to get to that level of superintendency. What is a superintendency? What's it all about? And we start off with three things: relationships, relationships, and relationships. And you can plug that answer in almost the first three questions of any current superintendent if they're successful. So Dr. Kuchar said, I also have affiliation with Middle States. I'm chair of of the commission right now, and I'll be stepping down very shortly as I move on as a retired superintendent. I also have connections, and we have partnerships through Rutgers University and working with because we have the proximity of Rutgers, and we're very much connected to University of Penn in our equity studies. As if you work in New Jersey, you live in New Jersey, equity is a timely and timeless goal that we've been working with many boards of education, because timely, it's now and we need it now, and it's not going away, so it's timeless. So with those partnerships, Dr. Kuchar, and working alongside Judy and Dr. Kuchar, we really feel we have a good insight to find those fits that's necessary to make it work between a board, a superintendent, and a community.
Let me also say, both Judy and Brian are superintendents of the year, state of New Jersey. Also, that would be on our team is Dr. Frank Alvarez, retired superintendent, Montclair, New Jersey, then retired out of Rye, New York as superintendent. Currently is finishing an interim in his hometown of Rivervale. But the last line of his bio really says a lot. And I don't know how many people that are superintendents. In 2008, Montclair State University awarded him an honorary doctorate for contributions to the field of education. To me, that was pretty impressive, sitting superintendent. And Frank certainly brings a rich background. His claim to fame, growing up in Union City, New Jersey, his two childhood friends was Senator Menendez and Bishop Manny Cruz. So he's like, he like me, surrounds himself with people smarter and better than them. But he's really a very dear friend, colleague, and valuable contributor. My partner, Frank Oriema, let me back up here. Frank was superintendent of the Pearl River Schools, Rockland County, New York, and he was one of the first school districts to win the Malcolm Baldrige Award. So I became friends with Frank when I became superintendent of Bergenfield Public Schools in 2005. And we really needed to grow and develop as a district. I read about the Baldrige Award and found out about Pearl River. I visited him. He did consulting, and a friendship was born out of that. Certainly, he improved our academics through the Malcolm Baldrige process, which is about efficiency and excellence and continuous improvement. And so just a really valuable person. So we now, and how I know Moorestown, is that Moorestown and Bergenfield, my old district, we're 53 and 54. on the U.S. News and World Report state rankings. So there is a relationship there. So Frank will be a key part of the team. When we talk about getting all the data and input, it's a lot of information. In Pleasantville, New York, we had over 2,000 items to collate from the focus groups. We had 700 surveys. Frank does the quantitative analysis. He is a statistician, and so he collates all of the quantitative data on the survey, and I get elected to do the qualitative data, the 2,000 comments that we get from focus groups, and we use an ethnographic process, qualitative, of where we break it down into themes and buckets and keep refining it till we're down to 7 or 8 characteristics and traits. And we work, again, we all are teaching at universities. I teach doctoral students at Seton Hall, and we'll work with graduate students to help disaggregate the data and help put this profile together. So that's something we're also very proud of that we do, and that helps create the profile that creates the fit. A little bit about myself as well, and I think this is really important. 12 years superintendent of Bergenfield, and I, like Brian, thought I was going to retire, and that was the plan. And then the current position I'm in came to me, and that is superintendent of South Bergen Jointure Commission, which is like a New York state BOCES, it's a district that supports larger districts with their special needs students. I have 4 children, all proud of and love dearly. But the 4th of 4, my daughter, who's on the spectrum, truly is my hero, my role model, and my inspiration. 3 years old, my wife and I were told she'll never go to a typical school and she'll never be able to receive a regular education. She'll need to be in private education. And so we fought against that, and we had our daughter in regular education from 3 years old through high school, which was a really huge accomplishment because she kept fighting and working through and mitigating it. She's now a sophomore in college, and she is in the honors program, not on the honor roll, in the honors program. So I know firsthand that the least restrictive environment for children is paramount. So I'm on a mission as well. Part of the mission is make sure the superintendents meet the needs of all kids on all sides, on the special needs, on the high end, and on the forgotten middle. And that's the chief school administrator. It's all about children first. And that's how important this job is and why we love to do what we do. You know, people say, "Oh, do you think it's a lot of work?" Some people golf, some people play cards. I love doing this work. We love doing it. We love seeing the success, and success breeds success. So the other thing that I think is important to know is that the guidance background as well. Important, really important to listen. And we focus on listening to people, not talking, but to listen, take good notes, and affirm what people say. And that's a big part of our process. This came from your Moorestown strategic plan. I love it. I said I have to use it. Successful achievement of the strategic plan requires commitment and support from all district stakeholders, government, leadership, staff, parents, students, community. Exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying. We're on the same page. Everybody needs to have voice in the process. Having voice, having ownership will help the person succeed in the position and help unify and work together. So the formal planning session, and let me just, because I see the time moving, let me reference something I gave you as a handout in your folder. And it's this superintendent search process and timeline. And I utilized Dr. McCartney announcing his retirement, being accepted in March 16th, Moorestown doing their due diligence, looking for searches. You will pick the search firm. Hopefully it'll be Strategic Educational Advantage. Then we pick a day and we're going to meet as a board, and we are going to come up with our plan, with timelines, with dates of what we're doing, and what are the deliverables by when. We're going to have clear guidelines, timelines, expectations. And that's a very important process. From June 3rd to 24th, we can have the online survey and the focus groups. The one thing that I think I would like to suggest is that we make sure that we can start the process and interview before people leave for summer vacation. So I think you have to look at your timelines closely, because the worst thing to do is to start focus groups and people are on vacation, people are here. So if we can do it before the close of school, it'd be extremely beneficial for everybody. So I suggest that in the timeline. And then by June 28th, we'll be able to draft the profile and the characteristics of the next superintendent. Again, based on all of the input. And then from there, we draft the advertisement for the position, where we advertise. And that's key and critical, as well as Dr. Zakowski and Ms. Radner were saying earlier. People come from everywhere, so we have to advertise with a broad scope. And I see that your focus, like many districts, rightly so, equity and inclusion and diversity, all very important. And therefore, you really need to recruit broad-based on diversity, inclusion, equity. And so we have processes in place in organizations that we work with to actively recruit people of diversity, again, that fit the profile. Not just that we check off a box and they comply to this ethnicity and we have X amount of women and so, no, we're going to have a broad spectrum of people because we've widely recruited for that. So the 28th, we would come up with the profile, do the advertisement, and roughly 3 weeks later, we will bring to you the pool of candidates. And what we do is fully transparent. And everything we do is transparent. The board will get all of the resumes. We're not going to pick for the board. Again, you were elected to do this job. We're consultants. We're your guides. We're going to work with you. And you're going to see all of the resumes. But we will do our homework for you, and we'll group them. Who met all the characteristics? Who met the profile? Who was close? Didn't really hit all the boxes, but there's something that you should look at that, well, we'll tell you that. Who clearly didn't meet the profile. And then, it's you as a board that chooses who you want to interview. And we like to call it Stump the Swami, and an indication of how we actively recruit. Dr. Brown, nice to see you. another great colleague, Dr. Brown. So where was I? Monica, you threw me there. It was so nice. See, where was I? Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we talked to the board, we have a discussion. And again, it's the board's choosing, and we like to call it stump the Swami, because again, we had 55 applicants in Pleasantville. We had 62 applicants in Goshen, New York, Orange County, 21 sitting supers. It's a lot of people. We will interview each and every one of them, and you'll see the whole scoreboard, and we call it Stump the Swami. Like, you'd be like, well, why didn't you say this part? We will tell you. Good luck stumping us, and I'm sure you can. Good luck, because we meet with everybody, and that builds up our network and our experience, because once we get to know, then we rely on, well, remember this one here, I think that'd be a good fit. And so we connect the dots. Brian, Judy, anything you'd like to jump in and add? No? Okay. I was trying to sip of water. So after we present, you decide how many do you want to interview. And it could be 6, could be 8, could be 10. Sometimes it's 12. You're going to be interviewing. We help you with the questions. All the questions and all the activities should be aligned to the characteristics. The rubrics should be aligned to the characteristics, so you can keep track. And we work with you on that and on that process. And so I think you'll see there's great alignment.
One thing as former superintendents, current superintendents that we have brings, we interview candidates. We can recognize that they can interview well and operationalize. We wish you a good culture. Superintendency is really about being able to take initiative and operationalize, work through processes. Great to have a strategic plan, but can you operationalize? Can you make it come to life? Because there's no straight A to B, point A to B. It's like a trip to California. You may have to take a detour, you may have to take a break, you have to think, there may be an accident, decide, bad weather. But you work as a chief school administrator. You'll see that those who are successful can take the initiative and speak about it, but also operationalize it. We help boards, because there's so many good people out there that can talk about it, but can they really serve the needs and take what the community needs and operationalize it within their organization as complex as a school district?
Thank you. And so the board will interview typically 2 rounds, and then we have to decide, again, your community, you know best, what involvement, now we're at the end with our finalists, do we want to have? And we work with boards on that, whether it be a meet and greet, whether it be an open house, whether it be site visits. Well, those are important things. At the point of finalists, it can be public, but we are very careful, and we tell the board up front that the process must be confidential up until the finalists, because we will lose good candidates if it gets out that they're looking for other jobs. So we are very protective of confidentiality, but once it gets to the end, we work with you as a board of how to really finalize it and get the input. So that's the overall. I'll stop here and now and ask you.
I'm sorry, we have to start all over. My mic wasn't working, so mine didn't. Just kidding.
So
Luckily, we were able to hear
we'll-
you.
We'll open it up to questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael, Judy, and Brian. We appreciate you putting in the RFP, coming here tonight in person, which is nice to see people in person. So I know it's probably a little different for all of us, so thank you. I will let my colleagues, if anyone has any questions to start.
I'm going to ask the same three questions.
I was
Just
waiting
try
for
to
that, 'cause I was
keep
gonna-
it even, so.
I was actually going to ask that, but I knew you would.
Yeah. So I asked the prior, and I'm going to ask everybody the same three questions. And I have two follow-ups later if people don't mind, but I'll wait for those. What are you seeing as the caliber of the pool right now? First question.
Good, go ahead.
I think stronger than ever before. The caliber, one, we all know in New Jersey, they lifted the caps. Probably a very poor policy decision. Sorry, it's a personal, right? But it lifted caps so salaries can not be based on number of students because districts are complex. Whether you're a group 2, I'm a group 5, it's very complex organizations, and you need a CEO, a leader that can do it, can understand the issues, and certainly lead. So I think what we're seeing now is more and more top-notch candidates are willing to come to New Jersey. They were migrating out of New Jersey and looking to the surrounding areas without, I mean, it's very expensive to live in New Jersey. And so I think that was one case. And the other issue is the type of districts that are becoming available. We see the attraction, again, it's maybe not New Jersey, Southern New Jersey is beautiful, but the type of districts that are open. So combine the fact that the caps have been lifted and there's competitive salaries and the type of districts that are becoming available. New Jersey has some great districts. And as you know, we're the #1 public school by ranking. We finally passed Massachusetts. So people take notice and they want to be part of success. They know New Jersey supports with resources and dollars. Just so the numbers are there qualitatively and quantitatively. So the pools have really been increased.
The only thing I would add is we're coming hopefully out of a situation where true leaders have risen to the top of the pile because they've had to be problem solvers. They had to deal with health information. They had to deal with relationships. So I think that what you'll see are really fine candidates as a result of that.
And let me just quickly follow up and say, at the risk of sounding conceited and arrogant, our pool is phenomenal because we customize it and we go out and seek candidates. So once we know the profile of Moorestown, we're going to actively recruit good people for the pool. And we do a really good job of that. And that's why we talk about our network and our strategic partners.
And then the last two questions I'll ask together, just in the interest of time. So what's your success rate first time out? Have you ever had a failed search? And then how many searches do you do concurrently? And how many are you doing currently?
Okay, so no failed searches. And again, what do we assess it on? Never having to use our warranty. Pretty much, we have people staying in the positions now 8 years. So we are doing extremely well with that. What are we doing currently? We're finishing Pleasantville, New York, and we just started Fort Lee, New Jersey, which if we do Moorestown, we typically do no more than 2 searches at once. And we have added a number of partners, consultants to the firm. Judy's been with us a number of years. Brian is relatively, no, not really. You've been here a few years as well. Frank Alvarez just came
He just
on
looks
board.
young.
So we also have expanded the firm. It was just Frank and I, which typically we'd only do 1 at a time. But we're comfortable with that 2 is very doable.
Thank you.
I actually want to just follow up on David's question. So based on the pool being good at this point in time, we were considering possibly, waiting a few months or not thinking in the summer would be a great time to start the search. Just wanted to know your recommendation based on the pool. This would be a good, because you would say the interviews start like right away. And our concern was just, we didn't think there would be a good enough pool at that point in time.
I think there's no absolute.
Right.
And I think there's pluses and minuses to both. People typically aren't thinking in September, October to change jobs, but at the end of the year, typically they do. Typically, you don't want to recommend people to start a job in the beginning of the year. Nobody wants to finish a cake somebody else was mixing the ingredients. So it's best to have clear beginnings and ends. I mean, again, nothing's absolute, but I think that your timeline, if you moved it up a week, you can get the focus groups in, and then you have the gift of time rather than the pressure of time. That's, again, your choice as a board, but again, consulting, giving advice, would be our advice.
Exactly. Well, you have the experience with knowing the pools and timelines, so that's why, we defer, and thank you for that recommendation.
Sure.
Anyone else? Sure,
Just to clarify, so your recommendation is to move as quickly as possible and have September, someone move in September rather than January. Just making sure I heard.
Yeah, ideally, I look down at the name, I'm like, you're not Mr. Comegno, you're not John. I'm ready to call you Mr. Dr. Snyder. The one thing I just have to clarify, I know you didn't mean it, the word rush.
No.
Yeah, all right, good. Because we believe in good to great. Collins that says, get the right people on the bus sitting in the right seats, and do not fill the seat until you have the right person. So even as search consultants, maybe we want to get it done. We are not going to tell you to get it done unless it's the right fit. If we have to go back out, we're going back out. So we're going to be very deliberate. I'm just saying it gives us more flexibility, and we can do it in a very thorough, efficient, effective manner. Thank you, Doctor.
Great. Drea, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Can you speak to any potential additional costs that might be incurred that aren't included in the typical, consulting fees, such as advertising, et cetera, or participating in interviews?
I wish my partner was here because I keep telling him, Frank, we have to change this proposal. It looks like we got hidden costs. And there's only hidden cost, but it's not hidden. District pays for advertisements. It's going to cost you a few $1,000s. Every other cost is in our fee. We do add, if you want us sitting in at the interviews, a per diem. We don't think it's our opinion that it's good to have consultants there. It's a board decision. And even the optics of it doesn't look good. We're not picking. The board is not relinquishing its responsibility to us. We're a guide. We're a facilitator. We know how to run interviews. And again, we're going to structure it for you. We're going to give you all the help and advice. But it's your interview to run. If some boards need some help, that's another story. But we know that you guys are going to be more than fine.
So if we were to select you, who would run the search? Collective or individual?
I'm
Is
not
it
sure. I know.
collective, or is it an individual that actually works with the, who would be our point of contact? Would it be one person, or is it everybody?
Oh, great.
That's a good question.
Great. Whoever you select, one person from the board, one person from the search firm. So spokesperson from the board, spokesperson from the search firm. So if we're selected, you're either going to interact with Mike Kushar or Frank Oriema, and hopefully we deal with one person from the board. We believe in open, clear communication. We help you with the process of keeping it transparent for the community, giving them weekly updates of which we'll give you of the process. We like to keep it very tight. So thank you for that question.
It now works.
Mike develops the timeline and assigns us to different responsibilities. So you would know who was involved with the different phases, but we'd all be involved throughout the search.
As superintendent, we deal with our board president, but we make sure each and every board member gets the exact same information in a timely manner. But just for your question, Mr. Weinstein, there has to be a point person for each to make this be efficient. So, but it is then become transparent as well. Thank you.
Sure. I just want to kind of go back to the timeline and weave in a couple other things. So I think, we talked about, we have a pretty ambitious agenda ahead of us, right? I appreciate that you all spoke to having a diverse pool of candidates, and I think that's something that we definitely want. It would be great to, have this timeline work out and have somebody identified and have an offer out by August. But I'm just wondering, in your experience, and I know you put it here, but if we say we want to emphasize that, we want to emphasize community involvement, we want to do all these things, realistically, is this overly ambitious? I won't say rushed. I saw Dr. Snyder get his fingers slapped for that, but overly ambitious. And talk about the comfort level with that, please.
Well, I wouldn't put anything in writing if I didn't think it was doable, number one. And two, we all like to have the low-hanging fruit. So I think it's very doable, but we'd have to really be in alignment. And that organizational meeting, like I said, you have to do a few things for the stars to align for it to happen. But can it be done? Absolutely. Is it not realistic? It is realistic, and it can happen. And again, we have to get everything set in terms of the meetings, have all of those focus groups and surveys done by the end of school letting out. And I think then it's all very, very doable. Because when you look at August, mid-August, if you're a superintendent, you have a 60-day at best release notice. Now we're seeing more 90 and even 120 days. That puts you in the middle of November. So you talk about giving yourself the gift of time. There's a perfect example. You can be in love with the best candidate, but you can be 3-4 months out. And if you keep prolonging it, where's that going to put you? Prior to your current superintendent, there was a lot of turnover. And one of the outside things that we could see that's of great value is that there's been stability. And that stability has really helped. And that stability now with a strategic plan and someone with a shared vision focus can bring you to even greater heights. So it's a great opportunity. And again, we don't choose everywhere to apply, but we're very attracted to this district and to working with you for those reasons.
The key is the community focus groups early on. As a superintendent, the summer months is better to get some in when we start getting into the interview process, because school starts, especially post-COVID. We're entering a kind of a unique return to school in September, and you start doing it then, you're going to find yourself probably best case March, the way things are. So it can be done, but it does take some coordination and alignment. But the critical piece is the profile, the focus groups. And then the summer is a lot of good work that could be done, and superintendents appreciate it. There's a little less pressure going on than the start of school post-COVID.
Can I just add one additional question that I think helps me kind of conceptualize this question, understanding the benefits and risks of doing it, over the summer versus what is the typical duration that your search processes go over, from, advertising to hiring?
I'd say 4 to 5 months.
Thank you.
Just to going back to the diversity, because we want to make sure we have as diverse and qualified a pool as possible. Could you talk about, you listed all the schools that you worked with before, just maybe an example of what you did to help foster a diverse pool and how that kind of worked out?
I think in Pleasantville, which is a very vanilla type of community in terms of it being very homogeneous community, we had a tremendous amount of diversity. And I'm going to give all the credit to the district, because the district wrote, and you should all Google the Pleasantville Public School website and look at their profile of candidate, and you're going to see diversity jumps out, and a genuine desire for diversity with its being very specific. And that attracted diverse candidates. And they really genuinely not just talked it, they had many programs that supported it. So while I'd like to take credit for that, and we did do some strategic things in terms of broadening where we advertise and so forth, and key connections. So we did, but really the board holds a great deal of power with how you advertise, how the profile is written, and I think
And where we
you're gonna
help
do
Dr.
fine.
Kuchar is our partnerships. As we have aspiring superintendents, a program been running at Seton Hall, and we've been part of the Central Jersey Consortium for recruiting equity or minority candidates. Central Jersey Pride is called. We've been able to look at candidates, aspiring candidates, and actively recruit them and get them involved in the searches. North Brunswick, we actively recruited your vice principal, Dr. Fred Johnson, who's still with me. He became a principal for 10 years, and now I brought him up to central office before I leave. And he's a wonderful administrator, got great training here, but I met him in some aspiring program, and those networks, we encourage those candidates to get involved in the districts that are out there. And for Morristown, to know as a consultant and work with Dr. Kuchar and Ms. Ratner, to be able to say to candidates, this board wants us to focus. They're looking for a diverse pool because it's important to them. That holds a lot of value. And being a superintendent and colleague, that helps us recruit, because they want to know, is it just a checkbox or is it really purposeful and valuable and meaningful by the board? So we're the conduit, we're the messengers for all of you. So yes, that's why we emphasize those partnerships. It's very important for us to help districts. It's it's needed, and it's timeless, especially here in New Jersey. We're the leader, and we're proud that we do focus on equity and diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. Good turn.
Thank you all. Thank you for your volunteerism as board members.
Sue, thanks.
Good evening. Good. So just stay somewhat near the microphone.
Okay,
You should be
and
all
they
set.
said I could take my
mask off? That's okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely
Okay.
fine. Yep, yep. And this is just a clicker forward and backward here.
Okay. Okay, hello. I don't know if we're shaking hands. I'm Monica Brown. Good evening, everyone. Should I go ahead and get started? Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, it was so nice to see some of my former colleagues. My name is Monica Brown, and I'm an associate for the past 4 years with Hazard Young Atia, and we are the largest national search firm. But what makes us different is we are a large national search firm, but we have a very local presence. So your team would be me, and I was a superintendent in Bergen County, New Jersey, in Upper Saddle River for about a decade. And when Bill and I present together, which we've been doing searches together for 4 years, we say we have 45 years of superintendent experience between us. Most of it is his, and his was in South Jersey, as you know. I think you all know Bill and Stacy from your work on the strategic plan. I noticed my former colleagues even mentioned that strategic plan. One of the things that I think sets us apart as far as a search firm is we worked with you and your community to put together that plan. And that would just give us that much more of a view moving into the process. And I will tell you the process itself, I started at Leadership Advantage. I did searches when right before I retired with them, before I fully retired. I still teach at Seton Hall. I was the president of the Superintendent Study Council. So you have really quality people who you're talking to there. And so what I thought I'd do is, instead of just going through the process, which I'm happy to do, it looks very similar, but I'm going to tell you what may be different from and just to respect your time, but please know that if you have any questions along the way, I do appreciate if you just throw them at me as we go. I'm a former superintendent, I'm used to that. So, okay, so your team would be Bill Adams, myself, and Stacy McNally Adams. And I know you've worked with them before. We do represent the largest educational search firm with over 1,400 searches nationwide since 1987. But with your group here, your team really has a regional focus. We work in New Jersey. We are doing one search now, and Mr. Weinstein, if I answer your questions ahead of time, please, it's just because I heard them. We are working on 2 other searches right now. This team, well, actually, I'm so sorry. The 3 of us would only be working on your search, but Bill and I are working in Ramapo Indian Hills, which is it's a regional high school district in Bergen County, a very high performing district, much like Upper Saddle River, where I was the superintendent for a long time. And also in Lower Merion, which is a Pennsylvania district, high performing, but we are at different parts in the process. Both of those districts have already had all their focus groups. They already have their leadership profile in. We're already actively recruiting. So we're actually in the later stages of the process when we'd be beginning with you. So you would have our focus, but we do know the region well. We finished at the end of last year, so in December, full COVID searches, we like to call them, during the pandemic. We finished in this area, Pemberton and Collingswood. Not with Bill, with another associate, because of course with HYA, you get over 100 associates from across the nation. Even though your team would be the 3 of us, we have the back office help with Danielle Martell. We have her on our presentation. She's our administrative assistant. We also have supervision by our national president, who will help us. But we have over 100 associates nationwide who we can use to help in the recruiting process. We send them your leadership profile. We send them your desired characteristics. We ask them to use their networks to recommend people who they know around the country. So we really feel like we get a great, we help each other. And by the way, we help them too.
when they send us. I've just finished a search at the end of March in Dover, Delaware, the capital. It's called Capital School District in Dover, Delaware. I worked with another associate on that. And we had a wonderful pool of candidates. Our goal, one of the things that makes me feel fulfilled as a recruiter and as a search consultant is when a board tells me, this is a really hard decision. This is a really tough decision because these are great candidates. That is the greatest compliment that we can get. And then we'll help you figure out a way to get to the best one. Okay, so other things that make us different, what we think make us different, we do have those guarantees. We will guarantee that as long as more than half the board stays in place, as long as there's not a mass transition in board members, we will, and the superintendent leaves for any reason, we would come back and give you a new slate of candidates, recruit again. Of course, advertising costs and travel costs would have to be, but the search fee itself would be. We also believe it's very important, the integrity of our searches. The person who we help you choose, we will not allow in any of our searches during their first contract with Moorestown, unless you write us and tell us, can you put them in another search? Which we hope wouldn't happen, but if you give them permission, they can. But as the largest national search firm, we run searches all over the country, and we will not put your candidate in another search because our commitment is to the board to fill that for at least the first contract. And then of course we'll do a price match. We will do a price match if we do ask that we just review the proposal for the other firm, and we look at the scope and the depth of services offered, and if we can make the match, if the scope is the same, then we will do that. We do find, I guess I should move. That's us. I know you have this, so I am just going to skip to that. So this is our process. It's very similar to most, I've worked with school boards. Actually, when I was hired as a superintendent, I went through the school boards process. So I know that I did some work with Leadership Advantage before I retired. The stages of the process are very similar. So I'm just gonna briefly talk about what might be a little bit different with us or what we enjoy most in those processes. Okay, for the engage phase, we think it's very important to have that planning meeting right away with the board. We will customize the search to meet your timeline, to meet your desires as a board, as far as which groups you would like us to meet with, which individuals would you like us to interview. But our goal is really to get to know you as a board. We interview individual board members. We want to know, we want to get to know you as a board so that we can create that leadership profile and the list of desired characteristics. We will be with you for 4 full days on site. If you'd like us here, we will do up to 8 meetings a day in a row. And yes, I've done it, and it's a long day, but yes, we do it. And then if you want additional, we can talk about that, but the definitely at least 32 touch points of meetings. And we really do our best to get to know the district so that we can recruit the best fit. Now, we collect data in 2 ways. We collect it in a qualitative way. I mentor doctoral students at Seton Hall too. That's why we all know each other. I'm a professor there, so we all get together. Anyway, so we collect data in 2 ways. Qualitative data through the interviews and focus groups. We ask the same questions and we look for themes. SWOT analysis, strengths. We'd like to say challenges instead of weaknesses, opportunities and threats. We create that, the themes. Quantitative data, we do use a survey. It's inclusive and it's based on some research, and it gives us a way to allow more people to be involved in the process. In Lower Merion, we had over 900 people do the survey in a short period of time because they wanted a short window. Again, that's depending on how the timeline works. And then what we do is we compare that quantitative data and qualitative data, put them together, create a leadership profile, desired characteristics. We present those to you. Once you approve those, we begin the recruitment process, because basically we're all in agreement of the type of person we need, the type of qualifications, who is going to most likely be successful, just like Scott's been, but what characteristics do they need to be successful? And that's how we know to recruit. So then going on to the second part, or the second phase, is the recruitment phase. And again, based on our planning meeting, we work with you. How long do you want us to recruit? Sometimes it's a short window, a 30-day window. Others want 45, depending, and we'll tell you the pluses and minuses. Over 60 days of recruiting, we find that it gets a little too long. But again, we would decide that, you would decide that, excuse me, with our input, and you would tell us how long you'd like the recruiting process to take. But just to highlight a couple things about the recruiting process with us, we do use our local networks, the New Jersey Superintendent Study Council, the Penn Study Council, the aspiring leadership groups within the region. We also have the benefit of being the nation's largest. We have I think it's 1,600 people from around the country who just want to be in our computer system. Help us find somewhere. Please note, we don't use those. We find someone who will fit you, but they get an email with all the information that you provide. So we do feel like we have a wide reach. We would also make recommendations in the planning meeting. I believe a question about diversity came up earlier. And again, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I just answer those questions as we go. With diversity, we've had a great deal of success, and I think we recommended in the plan that we presented to you to do some very targeted advertising in NABSE, which is the National Black School Educators Association, and ALAS, which is for the Association of Latin American I have to look it up, but yeah, the Latin American Association of School Educators. And we've had great success because some of our associates actually sit on their executive boards. So they help us to get the word out into very targeted groups. And we've been very successful in bringing and recruiting candidates, regardless of their background, by reaching out to them through our vast network based on your criteria. Because there are a lot of great educational leaders out there, but only a few who are going to be the right fit for Morristown. So we want to make sure that what we do is find you the people who would do the best here. But that is as part of the recruitment. We are active, we're not passive. We don't wait for the applications to come in. We go out and seek people based on the leadership profile and the list of desired characteristics that you've approved, and we try to find matches. A quick story, we often call people who we know or even don't know. I'm friendly, I just call them up. And I say, I think you'd be a good fit. Many times they're not even thinking of a new job because they're successful where they are. But that's my job to explain to them that they might be doing well where they are, but the opportunity in Morristown, they should not pass up. And that is actually where we find some of our best candidates, people who weren't thinking of applying to begin with, because they just are working so hard where they are that they don't realize or take the time to look at some other opportunities. So we would come up with a recruitment plan, make sure that you're informed along the way. Of course, we would make available to you all of the information that we get, and as well as our thought process as to why we think some candidates would be better suited than others. But ultimately, you all would decide at a slate meeting, which we're going into the next stage, which is to select. We, Bill, Stacy, and I would interview candidates, do initial Google searches of their, or Yahoo, whatever you're a fan of, electronic searches of their history, reference checks, interview them, and then decide who we think would be best for you all to consider to interview. Obviously, you can see everybody. We come to a meeting, we present what we call the slate. The number on that slate, you've told us at the planning meeting, you want us to have a slate of 10, you want us to have a slate of 6, you want us to, send you a best 3 and leave us alone. Whatever you determine that number is, that's what we will present. But you will also have all that backup material unless you'd like to see other people. We then will help you to write questions. And we will be, again, when I say customize the search, we will be as hands-on as you need us to be. We have some districts that say, look at the leadership profile, look at the desired characteristics in our strategic plan, write the questions, make them behavioral, situational, value-based, and they just tell us what they want. We craft the questions for you. Or you tell us the subject areas, or you all craft the questions and we make sure they are given to you in a form that you can easily keep track of during your interviews. We will, if you would like us, and we have in the past several searches, attend the interviews with you, not as someone who speaks or facilitates, but someone who is there. Make sure you have everything you need to just listen and take in what you're hearing. And once the interviews are done, we will help you facilitate the narrowing down process. We have a couple different techniques. We let you choose them, but we have been very, very successful. In fact, every search that Bill and I have done in the past 4 years, we've gotten a unanimous vote from the board for the successful candidate, because we work to facilitate that discussion. We use the Delphi strategy or technique in sometimes we do one we call vote off the island, and that's the survivor reference. But depending on our planning, we can help you through the process. And we use and create a matrix based on the desired characteristics so that you're really keeping that engagement from your community, the information that your community gave you in mind when you're making the decision on each candidate. So we really think that helps focus that. Okay. During the selection time, as you're narrowing down, you'll see in our proposal that we also recommend for either the final 2 candidates or definitely the finalist, the person who you'd like to extend an offer. We do recommend a third-party background check. We've been doing this long enough to know that is essential. Our third-party background check that we recommended to you, I believe it's $1,950. It's not inexpensive, but this, it does do a civil background check that we work with a firm called Baker Eubanks. They are retired state police and federal officers. They actually go to the county in which the candidate resides, look up civil records, of course, criminal records, which of course that would happen, but also a financial credit check. I mean, you're talking about someone who is ultimately responsible for a very large budget. You want to make sure that they make good financial decisions on their own too. We also do a credentials check. We had some problems in New Jersey in 2008. Some superintendents who said they had degrees they didn't have. We do that check for you. We do that check. That's part of that process. And then finally, very, very important is a social media check. If you look just recently in Orange County, New York, there was a superintendent who got in a lot of trouble for some posts. And we want to help you avoid that. Now, obviously, we can't tell you what they'll do in the future, but we can tell you what they've done in the past to the best of our ability. We want to make sure that the person you hire is going to be here for a while and is going to do a good job here in Morristown. Finally, in the transition phase, we find that the way our leadership profile is written is a very smooth transition because it's influenced by your strategic plan. It's influenced by all of your community groups and especially those board interviews. We find it as not seamless, but very smooth transition to the superintendent's goals for the first year. And we can help you to do that, set that up. And what that does is it makes sure that the superintendent, when he or she comes to Morristown and starts, they know what's expected in the first year and what they're expected to accomplish. And you all have given that to them. So there's that firm understanding from the very beginning of that open communication. I know I didn't take that long, but I wanted to make sure to leave some time for questions. Just on an aside, Bill and I, as I said, have worked together for 4 years. Stacy's been involved in some of the searches we've worked on too. We are a great team. Bill will be the lead. He's the one who worked most closely on your strategic plan, so he will be the lead. He does send his regards. He's flying here this week. He just had eye surgery, so he can't fly yet. But he wanted to make sure you all knew that he wanted to be here, and he's really excited about the opportunity of working with this board again. And I'm excited to get to know you all. So I'll be quiet now.
Thank you, Monica. We really appreciate you coming here and taking the time tonight. Sorry, we were a little off schedule and had to wait.
That's totally fine.
And yes, we did have a good experience with Bill and Stacy. So yes, send our regards to him as well.
Will do.
But thank you for being here. I know David has his questions.
I do, but she answered most of them. She answered most of them. However, I do have one.
Sure.
How many candidates do you typically garner?
Oh, that's how many candidates?
Do you typically garner?
Okay, so I can, I'm going to, it does depend on the search, and it depends on the leadership characteristics. It depends on the districts. How attractive it is. It depends on the board.
How many did you get for?
Pemberton, over 90.
For Pemberton.
Mm-hmm.
And where are you in Lower Merion?
Lower Merion, we just got approval of the leadership characteristics last night.
Okay.
So but as of today, we already have 6. Does that help? I mean, we posted it this morning.
So the 6 best, I'm sure.
Collingswood was 82.
Okay.
So it really, and of that, if you don't mind, Mr. Weinstein, I'm just going to add to that. Of those groups, typically we have about 1/3 from outside the region, 2/3 from the region. And for your region, I would include New Jersey and probably Eastern Pennsylvania. I would include that all as part of the region. I wouldn't necessarily count them as outsiders. But we typically have about 1/3 of our people come from all over.
And just curiosity, I mean, I know you've placed people, but what have you been seeing as the caliber of the pool? I know your process is a little different, but again.
Okay, so I've been very impressed with the caliber of people that we've brought to the boards recently. Like I said, it does depend on many factors, but I've been very impressed. This has been a tough year on educators, as I'm sure you all are aware, sitting where you sit as volunteers. Sure, it's been a tough year to be a volunteer too. There are more openings than usual. So is that impacting the overall candidate pool? It could be, but we haven't seen it significantly deter the number of candidates. The caliber of candidates, we're seeing more people who are willing to move, quite frankly. So sitting superintendents, to me, that means people with experience. With experience, obviously, you never make everybody happy when you're a superintendent, so there might be baggage too. But we are seeing, so it depends on what your characteristics are. If you're looking for sitting superintendents, we are finding that our candidate pools do have many experienced superintendents. If you're looking for people, if one of your qualifications is you want to make sure they have a doctorate, we've seen many people out of the doctoral programs ready, okay, I guess I'm ready to step into the candidate pool. So the caliber has been good. In Dover, which is the last search I finished, that was they appointed at the beginning of April. They had not only a greatly qualified candidate pool. I mean, we had the finalists were a chief academic officer from a large Midwestern district, a superintendent from Connecticut, who was Harvard educated and came straight from was a political appointee of the Obama administration during a tenure there. And the third candidate was a sitting assistant superintendent who was local. And they were thrilled with their finalists. And by the way, they were a diverse group. So it was, and that was really important to them in Dover.
And then my last question, just because if I'll just finish up. What's your thoughts on the 30 versus 45-day recruitment? Since you threw it out there, might as well ask what your thoughts are.
Honestly, 30 is tough. Now, because we are already recruiting in Lower Merion, we've done a lot of work. I mean, Bill and Stacy have done so much work in South Jersey. They know a lot of the players here. 30 is tight. 45 is perfect, in my opinion. 60 goes too much. 60, we start to lose people we recruited at 30, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Yep. Yep.
I have a habit of doing that. I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't miss anything. I hope I didn't miss anything that I was supposed to say because I answered the questions along the way.
No, it's actually better. And similar on the timeline, which was our last kind of
Right.
question for them as well. It seems like you would have a similar one in terms of trying to get the community forums and all of that wrapped up at the end of this year. And assuming there is a qualified pool, or at least that's what you're seeing, that would be an acceptable timeline. Or
It would be. I think the only thing I would add to my esteemed colleague's answer is the key is getting that planning meeting done right away, because we can't start the community focus groups until you tell us who to meet with. So if we can have that planning meeting, I mean, Bill's flying back, I think tomorrow, let's have it at the end of the week, not right before Memorial Day. I got it. But the sooner we have that meeting, the sooner we could get started with the focus groups, mostly because you could tell us who to meet with. The other key that I found, because I've done so many of these, is that usually we have, Bill is the lead, if it's board president or whoever the liaison, if there's a search committee chair, the communication is frequent and transparent. That's great. But what really makes us be able to move fast is if an administrative support person on your staff helps us set up the meetings. If they send out the email, and sometimes it's the BA, sometimes it's the BA's, honestly, it's the BA's secretary who helps us. But the more we can get that communication started, the more quickly we can get that set up. If she knows how to get in touch with all your PTAs or all your municipal government officials, if she can get emails out, if you want us to see faith-based groups or the Chamber of Commerce, if we have that local person who can get that information out, then we can start those meetings right away. And those two things, a quick planning meeting and a great administrative helper, those two things can make the engagement part go quickly.
So I will ask, say we do want to engage all those groups, and maybe we can call on the database we have from when we did our referendum. We engaged with lots of groups. I'm sorry, am I not allowed to say that word? Realistically, I think we want to have a lot of community engagement. If we're talking about June, where we have a graduation going on, we have, regular board meeting, we have lots of things going on in June, and then, presumably we start losing people in July. I'd like to hear your thoughts about how to fit this in and get that going. With all that going on.
Well, the world's changed. We have people. I did a community forum in Lower Merion that didn't start till 8:30 at night. And it allowed everybody to give it back from the fields or back from whatever they were for the parents to get in. We've done a community. I've met with all of the principals at 7:30 a.m. before this building's open, so we can get them all in one place. Students, if you'll let us, we can meet with them during the day while they're here, because student voice is so important. Teachers, the same way. If you allow, so your teachers, if you allow us to have some staff meeting time or that end of the year, we can go in and get those opinions. It's really important for us to talk to your association leadership and your rank and file. I think it's essential that whoever comes to Morristown is able to work effectively with your association leadership. And the most important way to make your leadership feel as a valued part of the process is to get their input early. So I would highly recommend that. When you said about the groups that you put together for your referendum or probably back for your strategic plan, we will bring them. We have a list of suggested groups that you can just check off and then you can add what you want. We make it pretty easy, but we want to make sure that we get to all the groups several times that you would like us to see. Several districts, because we are, if I might say so myself, we're pretty diplomatic and friendly, and it's a pretty positive experience for people in our focus groups. When districts are trying to engage their public, I recommend bringing in, like if you have a anti-referendum group, bring them in, let them talk to us. You know, we'll engage them, we'll listen, we will filter their ideas and make sure that you find someone who can handle that kind of pressure, whatever it is. We did a search in New Hampshire, again, a COVID search. And I say that because it was all virtual. And they had just, in New Hampshire, they have to vote on their teacher's contract. It's a public vote on the teacher's contract. And for the first time in 20 years, the teacher's contract went down because of worries about the economy. It was actually at the end of March of 2020. So the pandemic was just taking root and people didn't know what to expect. And there was a huge group of taxpayers in a very small town who got very angry about the thought of the contract passing. And their board said, we want you to meet with this group, bring them out. Let's talk to them. Let's get the feel for what their concerns were. And that helped. The notes that we took and the dialogue that we started has helped the new superintendent to bridge that divide. And so cross your fingers, their next vote will go well.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, I thank you so much for your time. I would very much like to work with you all. Like I said, Bill, Stacy, and I are a great team, and I think that we could put together a great candidate pool and hopefully make that decision really tough on you.
That would be great.
Right.
Thank you so much, Monica. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's so strange not to shake hands with everybody, but if I could just do the virtual shake. And have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks again.
Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Executive? Yes. You have a motion? Okay. Do you have a motion to go into executive for the superintendent search consultant discussion? Second. Mark, all in favor?